Good morning, and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute, where we start the day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of a special series in partnership with Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God designed for them. Our mission is simple but powerful, empowering a life of purpose, because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and for the generations to come. So, friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories and honest lessons and bold steps towards purpose with our guest today. And our guest is Jamie. And Jamie, welcome to the Good Morning Minute, and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I'm Jamie Hughes, a social psychologist, author, and trauma recovery coach. I've worked in the nonprofit field for many years, worked in children's hospitals, worked in the domestic violence and sexual assault field, and for the past 5 years have been doing coaching and especially have kind of gravitated towards trauma recovery, that being my specialty, and helping people um, find out where they are stuck that might be due to trauma. Sometimes they don't even realize it, and how to get unstuck and, make concrete and practical plans to move forward.
Mm. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm excited to jump into your story. But before we do so, let's start off with a fun icebreaker. What's one small thing that always makes you smile?
I'm a nerd, so anything that's comic book related or Star Wars related, I instantly, yeah, that gets me every time. Any new movie coming out, yeah, I'm there.
I love the Star Wars. It's funny because I introduced that as the new episodes started coming out. My son, my oldest, who is now 29 years old, was fairly young at that time, about 6, 7 years old, and so we watched the story of Anakin as before he became Darth Vader, and he just really clung to that. But I love Star Wars. I'm not. A fanatic as far as all the things, but I do. That's one movie that I will make time for sure. It was part of my upbringing as well. Um,
Good, good, good to hear you're a good person. That's
Wonderful.
that's my measure right there.
There you go. So yeah, let's just jump into it. Jamie, what was a defining moment of pain or challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
Yeah, so a defining moment for me goes almost all the way back. My mom was a single mom for many
Mm,
years, and she passed away when I was 8 years old. And so that left me, as a child with a huge amount of grief and trauma. And from that point, I had to go live with my dad, whom I had never met, and experienced many years of emotional and psychological abuse. And so I, even with the grief, I never had a good opportunity to process that. So
mm,
I began having depression. I grew up with that, suffered with that for many years. And my very first introduction to any type of mental health service was when I was 18, and that was only due to a suicide attempt.
mm,
And so, even the idea of what life holds, things like purpose, direction, none of that was relevant to me for a long time until probably about my mid 20s. And then I started taking intentional steps towards mental health healing,
mm,
going to therapy, uh, taking medication, and going to college and studying psychology.
mm.
So all of those things in my childhood and growing up sort of drove me in the direction of learning more and doing more and helping people.
What was it? for you during that time, like, from your suicide attempt to college, that kind of gave you a sense of direction? Like, what was it that just that aha moment for you that said, you know what, we need to make some changes?
Yeah, I think it was probably a few different steps, but
Mhm,
one of those being between 18 and 22, somewhere around that age. I just, you know, I really didn't do anything except just exist,
mhm,
and got in trouble a few times. And there ended up being just a point where I just kind of hit rock bottom and said, you know what, I just don't want to live like this anymore.
mhm.
I'm just tired of it. I don't, I, I have at least some aspirations of what interests me and maybe what life could be like. And I just don't want to do it anymore. And my grandparents, my mother's parents, uh, just kind of hit me at the right time and reached out and said, hey, look, we want to help you. And so you can live here, while we help you get in college and things like that. And so that was really the turning point, the beginning of the turning point,
Wow.
that sort of changed it all in terms of direction.
Wow, that's amazing because I just, coming from a similar background as far as childhood trauma, um, and suicide ideations, I had an attempt at 18 as well, but
Mm,
uh, I just remember being so lost at that point and not really having parental figures that probably didn't even understand their own life, and they were probably just trying to figure it out. I love my mom and dad. They're no longer here on earth, but I understand where they come from now, kind of looking back. But it and working with the children that I work with, I see that fear once that school career ends for them and they're transitioning into young adult life, and it's kind of like, what do we ask them, what do you want to do with yourself? And, we as adults say, well, you're going to be 18, so you're an adult. You need to already have it figured out.
hmm
And for you to have hit a rock bottom and at 22 had that awareness of, you know what, it's got to change. So many of us miss that,
Yeah.
and then that's where you see a lot of the generational situations occur, and until we get to our own rock bottom, so to speak, and figure out, I can keep going this way or I've got to make a change. When did you begin to sense there was purpose on the other side of your situation?
Um, Really, when I was in college, I started, like I said, and began to study psychology.
Mhm.
And part of it, my one of my professors made the statement very early on that most people in the field of psychology go into it to try to figure themselves out. And so for me, that was very much the case. That was very
Mhm.
true. And I had a passion for it, not just the figuring myself out part, but just the history, the methodology, and I instantly sort of sparked this like, oh, I've always had a desire to help people. My grandmother was the perfect example of that. She would walk down the street and check on neighbors that were sick, that kind of thing, growing up. So I always had that example, and that was just a part of me. So when the more I got into psychology, the more I realized, wow, this is how I want to help people. Um, it wasn't an immediate match, and this I think is something important for people to understand too, especially if you're on a healing journey and
Mhm.
there's that spark inside you that says, okay, I want to help others. When I was finishing my bachelor's degree, my intentions were to go into therapy, one-on-one therapy, and I wanted to help teenage boys that were in the system,
Mhm.
juvie, foster care, you know, natural fit. I grew up, in abuse and trauma, so I wanted to help people like that. I did an internship at a local boys home, And within the 3-month internship, I knew that that was not going to work for me. I would go home every night and cry. It was too much. For one, I was very empathetic, so I kind of took on other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I wasn't healed enough to be in that
Mm-hmm.
type of seat. I was still heal. I still had a long ways to go in terms of depression and trauma recovery. And so I I didn't pursue that, but what I did pursue was getting involved in nonprofit work in the area of program development and management. So
Mm-hmm.
I was very good at looking at a process, let's say volunteer training, volunteer recruitment, volunteer management. I could look at that process and see the pieces of it and understand the why behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where using my past came into play and being effective because I had the compassion and empathy to give. I just had to find the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. And recognizing and having a sense of awareness, like stepping into this job and realizing, whoa, this is really heavy stuff that we're dealing with. Um, and realizing, that you still had some healing to do. What was it that helped you heal and grow through this season of transformation for yourself?
Oh, a lot of self work, in the psychology field,
Mm-hmm.
in the metaphysical field, the spiritual field, you'll hear the term shadow work. And basically, it's just deep diving into those dark places within you, the parts that hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of shadow work. This is not the easiest thing for people to hear sometimes, but if you're looking to heal and grow from mental illness, from trauma, you're going to have to go through the nasty stuff. You're going to have to go through the dark and painful stuff to get to the other side. That's what it takes. But for me, doing that and just not stopping, and does definitely wasn't always perfect, and it definitely is not linear, not for
Mm-hmm.
anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't for me, but just keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep working. I gravitated towards methods like journaling. Um, I learned the importance of nutrition, physical health, um, things like that. I learned the importance of facing my weaknesses and my shortcomings in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very hard to overcome when you're talking about, personal trauma, whether you've been abused, assaulted, things like that. But that's part of it. And you just have to take those areas one at a time if you have to and say, okay, what do I need to grow in this area? And then just work on it until you
Mm-hmm.
get to not a place of perfection, but a place where you have that sense of, okay, I'm no longer drowning in this area. I'm afloat. It might just be on the surface, but I'm at least not drowning
Mm-hmm.
anymore in that area. And that's kind of where you get your strength from and you get your encouragement to go to the next step.
Mm. And you mentioned and I like that you mentioned the healing process isn't a linear process. I
Mm,
mean, and it's much like grief. It's
mhm.
very spiral. And so,
Yes,
you
yes.
could be good one day and then back, back at day one the next. What was it like during those times of setback? What were some of the things
Mm.
that you were able to implement, strategies or methods that you were able to implement to help get you back on track?
Yeah, the setbacks are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the setbacks are hard because your subconscious mind and even your nervous system, even your body is used to the low points. That's the area of comfort for you. And your body, your mind, your soul, your nervous, everything in you craves survival and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's people will gravitate towards what's comfortable, even if they know it's wrong or
Mhm.
painful, rather than the unknown. And so those setbacks, your mind immediately goes to, see, this isn't working. See, you don't deserve this. See, nobody
Mhm.
loves you. Nobody, see, I've told you this, that little voice that's the trauma speaking or the mental illness speaking,
Mhm.
uh, starts showing back up. And to combat that, one trick I learned was to say, um, this is today, and this is only today. This is not tomorrow.
Mhm.
And so it's almost accepting those those dark points during the setback. Instead of trying to fight it so much, it's accepting it, but it's accepting that, okay, I see you and I recognize you, but this is just for right now.
Mhm.
This isn't for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be different.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, if you really can to come to a place where you really accept that truth, that this is just, I often tell my kids, this is just a moment in time.
Hmm.
And you're gonna get through it, and it's not even gonna be a memory later
Hmm.
once you get past it. And it's so true. It's so true, and that's such a powerful thing to use in those moments
Hmm.
of lows, especially. Um, kind of speaking about, methods and whatnot, what advice would you give someone currently in a state of in between?
One of the easiest tools that I've ever used and that I
Mhm.
fell in love with and have taught for years is journaling. And not the diary sense of, okay, today's, June 5th and the weather is bright, not that. Journaling is a sense of just sitting down, even just for a couple of minutes, and writing down what you're thinking and feeling.
Mhm.
Not trying to interpret it, not trying to change it, just getting it out.
Mhm.
So that's one of the easiest methods. Is just grab a notebook, sit down and say, today sucks. I feel like crap. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm feeling,
Mhm.
and close it like that. It takes the emotional pressure off of your mind and your nervous
Mhm.
system
Mhm.
just to get it out. So that's one of the best methods, especially during those times.
Mm. And I like it too because it's taking the self, like that negative self-talk, and you're putting it on paper. So
Hmm.
you're not storing it internally.
Yes.
You're not thinking it and then, keeping it within yourself. You're actually kind of purging yourself of
Yes.
this negative
Absolutely.
self-talk, which can be such a great situation for yourself, because once you start emptying out those negative thoughts, you can come back and replace them with
Hmm.
positive affirmations and things that you really do want to see for yourself and whatnot. So I
Yep.
love that. I love that.
Absolutely.
Um, so Jamie, what does living with purpose look like for you now?
Um, so living with purpose for me now looks like being true to myself. And I know it's kind of got like this catchphrase in the past few years of, speaking your truth, living your truth, that kind of thing. And
Uh-huh.
there's some different meanings to it, but when you learn to be true to yourself, I think is to accept who you are and where you are, and without worrying and feeling that you have to pretend to be somebody else for other people.
Hmm.
And there's a lot, a lot of psychology behind it in terms of what we would call masking. And that's because that in itself brings on more stress, is where you have to
Hmm.
pretend to be somebody for other people's comfort.
Hmm.
Um, so I've, grown and learned to not to worry about that. It still shows up sometimes. I mean, that's just, I think, human nature, but for the most part, I'm concerned with myself for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and in that, I am able to freely give and be stronger for other people, and be a better guide to sit down with someone now and say, okay, let let me listen to what you've got going on. what you've been through, and it's easier for me to spot those milestones, those markers, and say, okay, I see where you're at
Mhm.
and I hear where you want to go. So now let's chart that course. Let's set that path and let me help you know what you need to get there. Um, so yeah, it's the combination of myself and then giving to help others.
Mhm. I love that. Well, as we start kind of wrapping up our conversation here, let me ask you this question of legacy and impact. If today were your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
That's a great question. I like that question. Um, I would say being genuine with people. Um, the people that the people in my life that I love and care about, they they know that.
Hmm,
There's no, and I'm getting emotional,
that's
but
okay.
there's no question. So I've been able to be the person that I wish I had growing up.
Mm,
So to me, that's a good legacy.
mm. And when you say that, it hits me because I'm in this field of work because I want to be someone I needed when I was younger too.
Yep.
And I want to make
Yep.
that difference. So I too am getting emotional.
I hope you brought Kleenex for the group here today.
Yes,
Okay.
I will. I need to make a note of that.
Yes.
Um, well, so my final question to you, Jamie, is
Mhm.
if you could leave just one truth or maybe a word of encouragement with someone listening today who's still trying to figure out their life purpose, what would it be?
Mm. Become a student of yourself.
Hmm.
Look at yourself as if you were looking at someone else. So when you go to school, you're given a book or, you know, an outline or something, and you said, okay, here's the subject. Now you need to read or listen and learn all about this subject. Do that to yourself. Sit down and look and say, okay, here's what I've been through. Here's how I see that it has affected me. What do I need to do about that? You
Mhm.
know, what's my next step? What what help do I need? Who can I turn to? You know, what methods and tools are available to me
Mhm.
to improve this or that? So just become a student of yourself and you'll start growing immensely.
Wonderful. Well, Jamie, if someone's listening and they're like, you know what, I really need to get in contact with him, I want to, learn from him, whatever, how can our audience do so?
Sure, you can visit my website. It's managingmentalhealth.net. And there you'll see the links to the books I've published that help people dealing with different mental illness issues, plus contact information if you want to reach out about coaching or if you just want to drop a line and say hi, that's a good place to go.
Wonderful. All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Jamie, for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. Conversations like this remind us that purpose isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, growing through what we go through, and trusting that every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute, and through Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every person has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So, wherever you are today, friend, remember, your purpose is powerful and you're not walking alone. So until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, and keep walking boldly into the life God designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love.